alliance with the United States either. Greg Palcott in Paris. Good to see you, Greg. We'll see you a lot tomorrow. Let's bring in James Carafano of the Heritage Foundation for some insight. Big election. Two candidates, one relatively pro-Russian, one not, and somehow there's hacking in emails. Dare we say, here we go again?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Russians have been doing that. They were doing this before the American elections. They'll continue to do it after the American elections. One thing we've seen that's been incredibly consistent with Putin is he has gone back into the old Soviet toolkit, and he's taken out those tools, and that includes disinformation and active measures. So this is kind of classic Soviet-style behavior.
Yeah, the Russian name for it is compromat in terms of creating this stuff. It does seem, though, that the French action, if you will, in terms of this latest email dump about Macron is kind of ham-handed. This doesn't seem to be nearly as involved as what we saw in the United States.
Well, you have to remember why the Russians do this and why you conduct disinformation and active measure campaigns. It's less about necessarily driving a specific outcome than it is in kind of undermining the legitimacy and creating a bit of chaos. Because as long as you're weakening and stressing your opponent and distracting them, and you're creating space for you to operate, that's more important than the specific outcome you get. And the Russians actually aren't stupid. They know that. If you go to Russia and you say, what are you going to achieve from this? Their answer is, we don't know. You know, we throw it over there and we see what happens. If it creates a little chaos, then good. If it doesn't, we do something else.
What are you hearing inside Russia to that point? Do they view whatever they did in the U.S. elections as a success?
Well, I do think they saw it as a success from the perspective of, look what's going on in the United States. We have a hyper-partisan political environment, and that's fueled that environment, and it's kept it hyper-partisan. It's kept people distracted. It has some people claiming the president is illegitimate. It has the administration having to constantly being to deal with these things. For them, even if they don't get a pro-Russian president, they've still kind of tied us up a little. And so for a very little investment, that's kind of a cheap win.
Well, and to that point, in terms of being tied up, you think about that we now have multiple investigations up on Capitol Hill into Russian meddling, big Senate hearing coming up this week. That going to change anything?
No, and this also shows the limits of that. Look, A, they didn't get a pro-Russian president, and that was never in the cards. Look, I worked on the presidential transition team. There was never anything in the plan that said, let's be, you know, weak on Putin or kind of lame on NATO. It just was never in the plan. So they were never going to get a pro-Russian president, and they didn't get one. So that got them nothing. And in a sense, even if the United States wanted to do something nice with the Russians now, it's going to be very, very difficult. Everybody in Congress hates them. The administration would be criticized. But I think all these, the political kind of trying to demonstrate collusion. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, obviously, and I don't know everything, but so far nothing has demonstrated anything like collusion. So it hasn't really even slowed the administration down. And in the end, it's actually weakened Putin because now they do this stuff so much that people are getting used to it.
Well, is it weakened him? It certainly hasn't weakened him internally.
Well, it has, in the sense that Putin is respected when he's strong and he's pushing people around. And when he's not pushing people around, like when somebody sends a 59 cruise missile message to your ally, that does make you look weaker. And,
okay, fair.
And he's antagonized Europe so much that he's actually created the pushback that he didn't want. And he is running out of spaces to meddle. So ironically, all this Russian meddling is actually not really paying off for the Russians.
Interesting, interesting perspective, James. Always good to hear from you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, Liz.
Well, the House Republican bill to repeal and replace Obamacare